live.
Can I see some? Oh, we have 36 participants, 49, 57. Okay. We're going to wait just a moment to get out to let all the participants get in. I see them loading at the moment, so give them a chance to load in, and then we'll get started. All right, looks like it's just slowing down on the participants, so we'll go ahead and get started with the town hall. I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. Take an opportunity to give you a little bit of an update on some of the things that are going on, and then give you an opportunity to ask some questions. We've got the Q&A box down at the bottom of the screen. You guys, many of you have been using Zoom for an extended period of time. You know how this works, so I won't spend a lot of time with it. We're ready and we're good to go. I do want to spend about 10 minutes, though, touching on a number of subjects to get started, and then from there, we'll go ahead and do the Q&A going. I want to also thank both Letisha and Joe for being here with me. Just in case you've got questions in those or in those areas that they need to provide some expertise that I don't have. So we'll go with that as we need to. First of all, on a couple of questions that or items that I know people have been kind of asking us about, and we've been kind of talking about. You know, the biggest question I think people ask is, will we be open in the fall? And the answer, of course, is yes, we'll be open. The next piece of that question is, what does it mean in terms of face-to-face? And really the message that I've been trying to give folks is that we do intend to have face-to-face classes. We do intend to have an on-campus semester. We're not exactly sure yet what entirely we will be able to do in the way of an on-campus semester. I actually just got an announcement that the governor released that he's got a little bit of a or an opening up plan. He's got it in phases, he's got regions, so I haven't read it yet, so I don't know what all's included in there, but clearly the governor is thinking about opening up as well, and we're moving those along, and we look like we'll have some opportunities. In terms of things that we're looking at that we are considering, we haven't gotten very far on a lot of these yet, but we are certainly considering. Things like smaller class sizes. We're not convinced that we'll be able to have large lectures open. Clearly, we're going to have more space in the classrooms and spread people out. We're probably looking at some greater number of online or hybrid courses. Going to have to figure out some way to do labs. And the other elements, of course, that we're going to have to look at, things like precautions to make sure we've taken care of the health and safety of faculty and staff. We don't want compromised faculty into a room where they have individuals that may have been testing positive and so on. And testing, of course, is an element that we feel like is going to need to be addressed as well. You know, one of the beauties of the on-campus experience is the fact that students get to interact as well. And so we need to be able to make sure that we have those on-campus experiences for our students also. And so we're figuring all of those pieces out as we move forward. So we've got a lot of things that we're looking at. We have about 6 to 8 different work groups going on and looking at different pieces, and there's some overlap amongst participation, and we've asked faculty to participate and staff and administrators, and a lot of those groups are going out and asking experts to get more information as we continue to start to address some of these questions and some of these challenges. I want to touch on hiring because I know a lot of you are engaged in some of the hiring processes that have been going on over the course of the academic year. Much of that has reached final stages or conclusions at this point. We have already added about 10 new faculty hired for the fall. We're finalizing arrangements for hiring of a dean, hiring of an associate vice president for enrollment management, executive director for international studies, and we've identified permanent chairs for a number of departments that have been operating with interim chairs. I think there may be a few more of those that we're still trying to finish up, but we're moving ahead on all of those hiring activities. so that we can have a full complement and permanent leadership in a number of areas, as well as enough faculty to teach our classes for the fall. Another piece that comes up that people ask about is always about budget. Where do we stand on budget? We've heard a lot of concerns about where the budget's going to be. And the reality is we really just don't know at this point. The state is working on their budget development for next year. And we hear a lot of rumors about what's going on in Springfield, but not a lot of things that are definitive. So again, this is kind of one of those groups that we have working where we're talking about a lot of scenarios, but don't really know where we're going to land on a lot of these things yet, because quite frankly, we don't know what the state's going to do for us or to us in terms of the budget. And the other piece that we're out there doing right now is getting information from each of the units. So I think I know I spend a lot of time with Letisha these days, talking to unit leaders and folks to find out what their needs are and what's going on in terms of people who are leaving or staying or adding and so on, so that we have all of that going on and all of those activities underway. We were fortunate that we got good money from the federal government, a little more than $8 million coming to Western Illinois from the federal government in order to be able to support us through some of our needs. About $4 million of that $8 million or so has to go out to students in the form of emergency aid. We've distributed a little bit less than $3 million of that for a number of purposes. Some of the bigger ones, students apply through an emergency aid application, and about $2.9 million that went out through that mechanism. And then there was a number of students who were ineligible for CARES Act funding. The feds put restrictions on how we could spend our money. And we did, I guess a little more than a week ago, we had Purple and Gold Day of Caring. And we're able to raise over $100,000 to support our students for emergency aid grants. And we've given that away too for students who need the funds. The stories that I've gotten some of these through emails, and I'm sure you have heard from some of the students, and the stories you hear are in some cases pretty heartbreaking. We've got students who are home trying to do their classes and finish up their studies and pass their courses, and they've got a parent who may have passed away. They've got parents that have lost their jobs. They've got grandparents who are sick. They've got younger siblings at home that are trying to study at the same time as they're trying to do their studies, and other people trying to work from home, and all of this going on at the same relatively unstable internet connection, and make all of this work out under one roof. And it's for some of these students, it's been challenging at the very least, to say at the very least. And yet the students are doing a great job and succeeding and just working and having success despite the odds that are heavily stacked against them at this point. And one thing I will say to all of the faculty who have done their outstanding level best to work with the students and help them out and help them succeed through these challenging times, I say thank you, because the hard work that you've done and the exceptions that you've made and the changes that you've made and the efforts that you've made to help these students out and help them to succeed is nothing short of phenomenal. And it's a testament to the Leatherneck spirit that you folks have done that work on behalf of the students who've also spent a lot of effort to succeed and make it through these difficult times. And we'll get through this. This too will pass, and we're going to come out stronger and better because of it and because of all the work that you folks have all done. And I say that about faculty, but it's not just the faculty, it's the staff too that have stepped up to the plate and reached out to our students and done the very good job that they have to make sure everybody can be successful. So thank you all for doing all of those things to help our students to be successful. Last thing I'm going to finish with is a bit of good news, because it's always good to finish on a positive note, and that's really the enrollment issue. We track the enrollment. One thing that I knew about Gary going in, Gary Swegan, who's the interim AVP for enrollment, is he's really a bit of a data nerd. And it's been a pleasure actually getting him or having him be able to compile the data. And I now get an enrollment report every day, which is probably way more than I need to. And I imagine it drives Gary and some of the enrollment folks a little bonkers when I see that and I ask questions about it. But the enrollment numbers continue to track very well. Applications, admissions, registrations, all above last year's levels. They continue to track above last year's levels. We have, we're at 30% or above in terms of new students relative to the end of last year. So we're at already at a point where at this time last year we did not have new student registration yet. We already have now 30% of the class that we put together last year already in-house, in place for this current year. We're real pleased with the numbers, the way they're looking. With that said, we're not taking anything for granted, right? We know that there's a whole lot of students out there that are still wondering, are they going to come for a fall semester? What is the fall semester going to look like? When are they going to get enrolled? Nonetheless, so we're continuing to do virtual events. We did an admitted student day a couple of weeks ago, had great participation. We're continuing to do those types of events. We've got a team of students reaching out to all the admitted students to make sure that they've gotten personal contact. I've seen some posts on Facebook where they've talked about the admitted student box and congratulations, you're a leatherneck. And we're doing everything we can to help these students make the final decision, come to Western, get enrolled, and commit to being here. Virtual registration and orientation is occurring, and we are underway trying to figure out what the initial events in the fall are going to look like. I would say, and I've already shared this with our orientation folks, I would say it's very unlikely Rocky After Dark is going to look like it did last fall. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we'll do something that will properly welcome all of our students here and get them into the swing of what the fall semester is going to look like and get them engaged. So those are kind of the things that I really wanted to touch on. Those are the primary events or activities that I wanted to get to before we started with the questions. And I see in the Q&A box that we have 4 questions there, so I will get started with answering some of these questions. So first one comes as a question. It says, great news about enrollment. I am hopeful Western can persevere. Will there be any students on campus in June and July? The answer for June is probably not very many. We don't have activities expected for June, so we don't see any real reason we're going to have students here. We'll be teaching classes in June, but they should be online. There may be some small groups of students, if we're permitted, for whom it makes sense to have some opportunities here on campus, but I'm not thinking very many. If we have any, it'll be a very small number. And as far as July goes, I think we're going to see more students. We have certain activities that typically would get started in July as we start to ramp up for the fall. And I expect that we'll start to see some of these beginning in July, and we'll have some of these. I don't know how we're going to accommodate them, to be quite honest, because we likely will have some limitations to what we can do. We will start talking about how we're going to be doing these, and we'll start looking at some of these activities and figuring out how we get to do and get engaged. So we think July, yes, in limited numbers. We think June, probably not, although there might be a few exceptions. And of course, we expect by August we're going to have a much more robust population as we lead up into beginning of the fall semester. I have a question. What is the membership of the working groups for fall 2020, and why has it been kept a secret? Are you using the expertise of our public health faculty to help with this? And the answer to the question is I can't tell you what all the membership of the different working groups are because I haven't kept track, and it's been very fluid, and it's not a secret, but the people who ask if they want to know, we're more than happy to share. But like I say, I have about 6 to 8 different working groups. They're fluid. Some of them have done their work. They've already been disbanded. Others are being formed as we speak, and people are being added and withdrawing from them in real time. So you can ask me today who's on a particular working group. I'll give you an answer, and it could be a different answer that you get tomorrow. That's the challenge we have in dealing with a crisis and dealing with situations as we move things forwards. It's very fluid. Things change on a very continuous and rapid pace, and we don't have a constant membership of people that are spending months evaluating out issues and challenges. We have smaller, nimble groups spending days to weeks trying to figure things out and getting the best information they can. Which goes to the second half of your question, which says, are we using the expertise of our faculty? And the answer is yes. We have public health faculty. We actually have on some of our committees, we have public health faculty. We have the chief medical officer from the WIU Health Center. We have other expertise in different places where we're taking advantage of people we have on campus to help us out to the extent that we have and we can. You know, on working groups where we're dealing with financial issues, we got all the financial people around the table, including potentially some financial, accounting faculty or business faculty who are engaged. So yes, the answer to the question is we're taking advantage of the expertise as best as we can, as best as we have with the folks who are engaged with this activity. Okay, next question. You mentioned several positions that we've hired for already, which is great. My question is about the remaining open positions. Do you anticipate that we will still be able to fill those? In supply chain management, we made a recommendation back on April 1 to hire a Unit A candidate, but we have not heard anything back. The answer to the question, are we going to be able to move forwards on any additional candidates? I can't say unequivocally, but I'm skeptical at this point. We've been looking at budgets, we've been looking at where we have funds, we've been looking at where we can get some resources, and we have very limited amounts of funding at this point and a very minimal amount of resources. But I'll tell you again, same thing I said in terms of the working groups. Things change frequently, and the need to hire some of these folks or to bring in some of these people may actually grow if something else comes to light about somebody else retiring that we're not yet aware of, or somebody else who might be leaving that we're not currently aware of. So I won't say unequivocally we're not going to be able to continue on any of these, but I will say that I feel it's fairly unlikely at this point. As we listen to what's going on in the state, we just don't feel like we're going to have a lot of additional resource in order to help us meet additional challenges at this point. Doesn't mean we don't want to. I know very well that we have tremendous needs in many areas that are going unfilled. I'm well aware of it. I'd like to be able to fill more positions, but we are realistic in terms of having limited resources in order to do that. So it's where we are on those. Please describe what specifically each of the 6 to 8 working groups are studying with regard to the fall plans. Who is in charge of each of the group? At what point will they be reporting their conclusions, and how will this information be shared? Awesome. How are faculty selected to be on these committees? And why wasn't this handled through the Faculty Senate's committee that is tasked with handling this? How are students being surveyed or otherwise consulted about their views on the alternate methods used this spring and their preferences for what happens in the fall? I'm going to my notebook because somewhere in here I had a listing at one point of what the work groups, what some of the work groups were. I just found one. I just found it. And so, and this is, as I said, this was a group, this was as of the 14th of April. This was the list that we had underway. We had a group looking at return to work. Keitra Roselieb was working in that group, and I don't recall who all was included in her evaluations of where that was, but there was a lot of HR staffing in there and a lot of, I don't remember, do you know, Letisha, who was in that group?
Specifically?
The return to work, this was Keitra's group she was putting together. You were on that, well, you might not have.
They're still working.
And I know they're still working.
And it would be the representatives from each HR unit.
Yeah.
As well as probably equal opportunity and access.
Okay. So that's that group. There's a fall contingency group. That's Billy has been running that. That's a group that's been mostly academic, focused on academic questions. And I actually met with that group yesterday, so I can actually tell you who's on that group because I wrote down the names. And assuming I can read my script, my chicken scratch here. Pete Jorgensen, Chris Morrow, Tara Feld, Russ Morgan, Lorette Oden, Mark Mossman, Buzz Hoon, Mike Waters, Angela Lynn, Susan Stewart, Jack Elfrink, Gary Swegan, and Christy Mindrup, along with Billy, was in that group that I met with yesterday. There was a group at this point, at that point in time, it was a group around commencement. Angela Lynn was leading that effort. I don't recall who exactly else was in that group, but she had some other people in there. And one of the things, they were doing two things. They were helping to organize the virtual commencement, and the other component was going out to survey students to get input on what the students wanted for a commencement later on in the semester, in the year. And so that group was going forwards and doing their work. We had a group dealing with emergency funds, the distribution of the CARES Act money. I told you we gave out $3 million or so in CARES Act money. That was Bobby Smith who was running that group. They've mostly done their work. Again, that's a group, I don't remember the details of who else was in that, but it was a lot of financial aid people who were engaged in that group.
And those that would be processing.
And a lot of the processing folks. At the time, again, this goes back to middle April, we had a residence hall move-out group. That was John Smith. I'm sure Joe was in that group. JB was in that group. Keitra was probably, no, I don't know that Keitra would have necessarily been in that group.
We don't talk about that at dinner when I go home.
So that was a group that was going on. There's a group around enrollment, recruiting, and retention. That's really been an ongoing activity. Gary's been heavily engaged with that. All of the enrollment management leadership has been engaged with that, including Doug Freed, including Justin Shue, including Cassie Daly up in Quad Cities. And they've been engaged in all of that. I'm not sure exactly what additional people they also have involved that they've been working with. But anyone, I mean, if you go to those individuals who I'm identifying as the lead for those, they'll tell you who all in those groups and who's been engaged. There was another, I had a conversation with John this morning, and we've got another group that's working now in terms of, again, it's a fall planning group, and John was going to pull this together, and this had to do more with some of the questions around student services questions that we needed to address. So he was going to pull together a group, and we were going to have Russ involved, we're going to have Mike Waters involved, and these folks may not even know they're going to be involved yet because we haven't told them yet. Eric Arnold from Emergency Management is on the list of people to be incorporated. Maybe building some of the nursing or health science faculty in to get them involved as well. to the extent that we can, when we're engaged in these conversations, so those are the groups. So those are the groups, those are the plans, and those are what's happening. I think what you will see as we look at, as you hear about these are, in many cases, they've been pretty short term. They've had a task to do, identify a process, solve a problem, make it happen, get it implemented, and then we're kind of done. And, as much as I'd like to go out and use a full shared governance where we go out, we run elections and we identify the faculty, and, by the time we'd have those, we go through all of that process and have those individuals identified, we'd be done with our task. And so we're doing as best as we can to try and engage faculty into these conversations to the extent possible. And where we can, we're trying to engage students as well through the student government associations for the various activities that we're doing. I know I had a conversation with Colton Markey 2-3 weeks ago. We were supposed to have a sit down with a group of student leaders. That never materialized, but I know it was something that we talked about, and some other of those types of things, and try to engage the students in what's going on to the best that we can as well. So that's where we are on those working groups and where we're at. Our chair put in a request to fill for a position in late February. So far, this has been held up in academic affairs. Is there a time frame for acting on those? My guess is, and I don't know which department this is, or specifically which position it might be, but my guess is if it's been held up in academic affairs since February, that's because Billy has not yet convinced me that it's a position we need to move forward with. And so the answer to the question is there a time frame for acting on those? Yes, it's probably not happening this academic year or this fiscal year.
Not that he isn't trying.
Not that he isn't trying, right? So we'll Billy and I have worked and tried to deal with these as best as we can. Next question. Do you think accommodations can be made for faculty who are caring for elderly family members? The pandemic has affected home care services. Yes, this is an issue and a challenge that we have. We are, this latest group that I just told you about, that I said we put together this morning, that's kind of one of the questions that I've asked them. I've tasked them with helping us find an answer for. We need to have answers for how we're going to get our faculty working from home effectively. Some of our faculty are dealing with some of the same issues I said our students are dealing with. They've got elderly parents that they're dealing with, that they're trying to address. They've got kids at home that they're trying to educate because the kids are home and they're being homeschooled, and they're trying to do that around teaching and these areas and these challenges that we're facing as well. We know these things are ongoing. We've dealt with them as best we can through the initial crisis. I don't know what the fall is going to look like. I don't quite frankly know how these are going to continue to play out over the summer, but we will have faculty at home teaching, and we need to have accommodations for them, and that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at in this additional group that I just put together to address, to look at, to figure out answers to. Same type of deal. How do we accommodate our faculty who have needs, who have things going on at home that they have to be able to address?
I would add to that you could reach out to your human resource representative now to see what accommodations and additional benefits would be provided, because we've certainly been very flexible, and the Families First Coronavirus Response Act has added a great deal toward our ability to be flexible. So I would encourage anyone who has a human resource related question to reach out to either academic personnel or human resources.
Good point, thank you. In regards to the budget proposals and enrollment, how can we cut the budgets, specifically talent grant and tuition waivers, when money has already been promised to these students? This is a huge recruiting tool and might seem like we were lying to those students coming in when we don't have the money we were promising them. I think this will hurt retention significantly, not to mention the need for these students that we have the talent grant tuition waivers to help departments succeed and function on a day-to-day basis. How do you think these cuts will affect everyone? The proposal for reduction in talent grant actually ensures that there is still sufficient money to pay the talent grants of everybody for whom a talent grant scholarship was already offered. We've looked at the dollars that we would collect under the proposal. We've looked at monies that are sitting in reserve accounts, so that these are monies that have been collected in past years that have not yet been expended. And we know that we can cover those expenses for the upcoming year and for all of those commitments that are out there. As far as tuition waivers are concerned, I'm assuming that you're talking about graduate student tuition waivers. I don't know what commitments have been made since the graduate student tuition waivers are out there in budgets that are not yet approved. And so I don't know what commitments have been made for new incoming students in tuition waivers that are out there that have been made by people who are doing some recruiting activities that maybe are still out there. I don't know like I say, I don't know where the tuition waivers commitments are that you're specifically talking about, but you know, if we as a university have made a commitment, we'll honor those commitments. We'll figure out a way to do that. And we certainly don't want people going out and making commitments that are not already authorized, have not been guaranteed in a budget standpoint. We are working with each of the programs to try and ensure that we have the money available to cover the costs that have already been committed, but would urge you not to make additional commitments that we might not have the resources to cover. But for the specific purpose of talent grants, I know that there's been a lot of chatter about that one over the past couple of days as people have started to look at the board agenda. And I will say that, like I said, I know, and I sat with Letisha and I sat with Billy and we looked through all of those numbers and we made very certain that we could meet the commitments to all of those students based on the funding level that we were proposing. I don't know if you want to add to anything on that.
Covered it.
We're good. Okay. So next, I very much hope that we can hold hands-on labs in the fall as it helps continued ACS approval of our program and it gives the students the type of education we are known for. We can social distance by holding smaller lab sessions. Can we relax the minimum enrollments per section to accommodate social distancing in the classes and the labs? Yes, I don't know. I mean, I can't say specifically what that looks like yet. I guess I skipped a couple of questions, but yes, I don't know specifically what that looks like yet, but this is an area we are very much interested in doing. We are very much concerned about the labs. It's one of those pieces on the list of things that we need to look at to make sure that we can do those labs and hold them and have them properly involved. We will actually be getting back as we start to have this conversation with probably chairs in the various departments and faculty in those departments to ensure that we can do the labs and run them effectively for our students. We know that that's one of the challenges we face, and you know, as an engineer myself, I know the value of hands-on instruction, and I do expect that we'll find a way to do that. As faculty members prepare classes for such an uncertain fall, do we have the freedom to innovate in ways that may differ from the way our class has been advertised in course offerings? For example, can we design a face-to-face class as a hybrid in which we divide students into groups and ask them to alternate attendance so that fewer students are in the classroom? Sherry, you're actually ahead of us. Yeah, that's actually one of the things I had a conversation with this group about yesterday is, can we do exactly those things? The answer is probably yes, but we have to do it in a way that's organized, coordinated, and acknowledged. So the answer to that question will almost undoubtedly be yes, you have that flexibility, but somehow we have to coordinate that through the registrar's office so that we kind of know what's going on and that the students can be informed, and all of that communication occurs in a way that's effective. I don't know how that communication works just yet, but the answer to the question is yes. I love when faculty think creatively and come up with those types of answers. We certainly are going to empower faculty to do those types of things so that they have the opportunity to provide the best quality education they can. But we are going to ask for some coordination of these things so that we have the ability to, first of all, know what we're doing, know what the faculty are doing, and then be able to communicate with that with the students, and be able to communicate it with various other entities like accrediting agencies and IBHE and whatnot, so that all of this is known and coordinated. So we'll be able to be there and do that. And yes, I love the idea, exactly what you're talking about. We just talked about it, and I think we'll do those sorts of things as well. UI Chicago has indicated in the fall they will have on-campus classes for sections under 70 and online classes for those over 70. Are we looking at similar plans in the fall? Yes. Although I don't know that I would say similar ideas, but not necessarily the same. Nor is that the right number. I don't know where 70 comes from. I would probably tell you that we would probably not use 70 based on what I've heard. I would say our number is more likely to be 50 and possibly 10, because I haven't heard from the governor yet that we're going to be in groups of greater than 10. So the answer is, yeah, we'll have some face-to-face, we'll probably have some online. And for us, we might have the ability to take a class that normally would hold 70 or 100, and we might decide we need to break it up into 2 or 3 sections. So yes, we're going to figure out a way to accommodate that, but I don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet. Summer session. Summer session begins very soon. We're waiting on some contracts to process. When will those contracts be processed? Faculty need to be able to get Western Online set up. I'm not sure what contracts you're waiting on. I had a meeting this morning, actually, and we went through, I don't know, half a dozen or so, maybe a few more that were at academic personnel. I said yes on several, and I said no on others. So there's nothing other than the processing time now that's still required on getting those that were sitting in that had already made it through the system that far. To getting those processed. We'll continue to process them as quickly as we can and continue to move those forwards. Who will decide whether a class is safe for faculty to teach face-to-face? What metrics will be used? Can a faculty member be compelled to teach face-to-face, or an advisor or admissions counselor meet face-to-face if they feel it is unsafe to do so? I don't know the answer to that question at the moment, but I am thinking that if we reach a point where we have done what we believe is needed in order to make a classroom safe for a faculty member, and I don't know exactly what that means yet, we will be working with CDC guidance, Illinois Department of Public Health guidance, and figuring out what that means in terms of making something safe. And we get to a spot where we believe that we have made a classroom safe, and we have a faculty member who can present no evidence that they have issues with participating in a face-to-face instruction, depending on what the guidance is from the governor and the Illinois Department of Public Health and so on. And the faculty member comes back and says, well, I still don't feel safe. Then the position of last resort is to go back to our guidance in terms of sick leave policy and FMLA policy and what was it, CPP or
Families First.
Families First, Coronavirus
Response Act.
Yeah, whatever those acts were, and say, look, if you don't feel comfortable teaching, and we've done everything and we believe that it's a safe environment, but you still don't feel comfortable, you have this option to take the time off because, and we won't question it. We'll give you that opportunity to take time off, and we'll work together to make it work for you. So we'll work on these things and develop them and try to evaluate them as well and move them along. So we'll deal with that in that way. I'm currently scheduled to teach a face-to-face class in the fall. If we go online, will there be any compensation to create a new online class from this current face-to-face course? And what kind of timeline will there be to make such a change? There's a difference between going online and doing remote instruction the way we did it in the spring. If you convert this to an online course and we go through the regular process and we do all the rules that are associated with producing an online class, then I think one of the rules is that we compensate faculty for that activity. And so if we go through that process and we make it happen under those types of policies, then compensation would be forthcoming. If we don't do it that way, and we do some other sort of emergency type of activity, then you probably don't get compensation for it because we don't have the same activities and we don't have the same rules and we don't have the same structure and we don't have the same expectations, quite frankly. But I don't know that there's answer to that specific question at this point. We're working, I'll tell you what, I mean, we're thinking now, we're making plans for the middle of August, which is 3 months and a little bit from now, 3.5 months from now. And if you think back 3.5 months ago, we had no concept that this was coming down the road. And in fact, it was less than 2 months ago that we made the decision to go and move to a fully online schedule. So within the lifetime of what we're looking at, 3.5 months is a huge amount of time for us in terms of how we're making decisions and how quickly things are evolving and changing. I hope that we have plenty of warning and we're able to make a decision in a timely manner. I hope that, as I mentioned to you earlier on, we've got a little bit more guidance from the governor that came out at about 3:30. So I haven't had a chance to read it and review it yet. We will do so. We'll figure out what it means. But I think one of the things that it means is that by the end of this month, I expect we'll have some pretty clear indication of where we'll be headed and what we'll be able to do, and we'll be able to start making some decisions that are in concrete as opposed to quicksand, or at least maybe, even if the concrete is maybe not hardened yet. Right now we're making decisions in quicksand, and I can't plan for much more than a couple of days in advance. So the next question is, why are fees for the arts being cut 33% and 50%, while fees for athletics, which are much larger, are only being cut 6%? What does this say about the university's priorities? Your percentages are based off of very different baseline numbers, and that's why the numbers are being, the percentages look so vastly different. The actual dollar amount impact is actually more extensive in the athletic side than it is on the arts side in terms of the dollars that it impacts. And athletics also has appropriated funds that will also be impacted and are also being reduced. So I've already had some meetings with the athletics folks. They know that they've got significant cuts coming up. We're talking about making those hard choices, and I met with Danielle this morning, and we're talking about how we're addressing the very hard challenges, the very hard cuts that they're going to have to make. A combination of a reduction from fees and a reduction out of their appropriated accounts. So we're having those conversations across the board. And we actually might be a little further ahead on the athletic side in terms of cuts than we are on the academic sides. So those conversations are all ongoing, and we're all looking at those things in real time. Advisors need to print ward reports to be able to effectively and correctly help students so that they get into the right classes. We have worked diligently to try to get students registered, and we were told that we would get reimbursed for ink and paper, but that we were turned down for it. It is frustrating to be putting in so many extra hours to make the numbers what they are and then not be reimbursed for these small things we need to do our job. Any consideration is greatly appreciated. I'm curious, when you print a document, how you manage to then get that document to the student. We're working in a distance environment. At this point, I would tell you, you should be printing your ward reports to a PDF file so that you can transmit it to the student and communicate with that student through a video conference. And if you're printing out the document, then you're probably doing something that is no longer appropriate to the way we're working through technology. It's time that we moved into a real time and real processes and real situations, and we take advantage of the technology that to some extent we've been forced into in the last 8 weeks, but in other ways is something we probably should have been doing for a long time. And so I would encourage you to utilize the availability of a PDF printer, and there are various free ones available that you can print stuff to a PDF document. You can then share that PDF document with the student and communicate in real time via the two-way chat with the student with a real document that you've looked at that is a printed ward report. And so I'd encourage you to use that to use technology to assist you in doing your job. Next question. Are you expecting a universal policy about faculty wearing masks while teaching in person? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think as of right now, they would be required to wear the mask in the classroom. But I would say it all depends on the facility and what the classroom is. If you're 6 feet away from the closest student, then I would say at this point, as it's how everything's laid out, is that you would not need to wear that mask. But in some classroom settings, you may have to, you're a little closer, or you were working with a student, you would have to wear that. So again, that's something that changes with flexibility, and every day it seems like we get new guidance. And as everyone's aware, masks were important and they weren't important. Now they're important again. And so I think, as we get closer to that school year starting, I think we'll look at the guidance at that point and make the expectations present at that point.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Next question. I hear that you're protecting the talent grants that have been promised to incoming students, but what should we expect for talent grants that are promised to be available for student workers? Our theater department promises our students that talent grants will be available for them to earn working in our shops and in our shows. We have student worker funds in various places, one of which is in the appropriated funds. Not sure if talent grants are used for additional student hires. I'm not sure if that's an appropriate use of the talent grant, given the way I've seen the talent grant written up. But funds are going to be available to the extent that we're going to be able to make them available, and to the extent that budgets are going to allow. And I think we're all going to have to make, we're all likely going to have to make some cutbacks for fiscal 21 going forwards. I don't know how much, I don't know where, I don't know what they're going to look like. So I'm not going to make any promises today that funds are going to be available to hire additional student workers for specific activities going forwards. We'll have to we'll have to talk about them, we'll have to evaluate them, we'll have to determine where the greatest needs are, and then we'll have to make some decisions about what we can afford to do, given the hard realities of what is expected to be a decrease in our appropriated funds coming from the state. So we'll be looking at it, and like I say, Letisha and I have been spending a lot of time talking to a lot of departments and a lot of programs about what the needs are, and we're going to make some initial evaluations based on that, and then we'll be back at it with the various programs talking about what we can afford to do and what we can't afford to do. Next question says, if we are online in the fall, will all faculty have a professional Zoom license made available to them so we can hold full 50 or 75-minute class sessions? You know, if we're all online, we're going to have to give everybody an opportunity to have a, you know, a professional Zoom license. One of the things that we're looking at with our CARES money, CARES Act funds, is an investment in technology. Whether we're all online or not, we're likely to be more online than we have been, and we're likely to be working with students remotely through advising and through other student service functions and through other types of events and so on and so forth. And so we're going to need more license capability. We're going to need more technology resources. I've been working with Rebecca to get a sense for what the real needs are. And I actually have a proposal from her that I received yesterday morning, may have been yesterday morning, may have been this morning, that includes some additional needs for licensing, one of which was increasing our Zoom licensing. So, yeah, we're aware of it, we're working towards it, and we're going to make those services available as we can. Next question comes in. I'm nervous about having to meet face-to-face when I advise students in my office. I can't get 6 feet away from a student in my office, and our office space is not configured to separate students from each other as they wait for appointments, and not configured to separate coworkers from each other. Assuming that social distance guidelines are similar in the fall, could we consider continuing virtual advising in the fall? Yeah, you know, absolutely. I think that's one of the things that we're going to have to look at, is how do we do advising in a way that we don't have 5 students sitting around in one location waiting to talk to an advisor. We're going to have to figure that out. Then some of that may be reconfiguring space. I don't know. We're going to look at all of these activities, all of these options. We're going to find out how much money we have available. We're going to see what we can do, and we're going to do the best we can to accommodate those needs. But it's a good point, and virtual technologies and distance technologies is going to continue to be a portion of what we continue to do. In order to communicate comments and facilitate other projects online, I had to purchase Adobe DC for my personal computer. Will that be compensated? I don't know, because I don't know what you did in order to go out and purchase it. And quite frankly, I'm not sure what the university's licensing for Adobe is, and if you should have actually talked to somebody before simply buying it, so that we could have purchased you, given you a seat on a university level purchase. What I would encourage anybody going forwards to do is that if you've got a technology need, is you send a note to somebody to say, I have this technology need, and somebody could be your department chair, or it could be IT people, if it's a technology need in IT, and say, I have a need for this technology. Is there a resource available through the university that I could utilize that would make it available, or do I need to purchase it individually? And you certainly would want to get an individual purchase approved in advance, and then that would ensure that you would get reimbursed for it. And you know, I think the answer is we're going to try to reimburse you to the maximum extent we can. We don't expect you to be going out and making these types of purchases on your own in order to support university needs. We are grateful if you're doing it, but if we have to reimburse you, then we'll do that. But you know, again, I would put out the caveat that says, ask somebody before you simply go out and make the purchase. I've worked with, I guess I'm a little different in terms of getting responses back than what everybody else might be, but I generally get responses back very quickly when I've asked I've asked questions, and I think the IT folks are very responsive. I'm sure department chairs are very responsive. If you've got a technology need, ask about it, and then make sure that we get it looked at. I think I have a question that came in that somebody deleted. Is that what I gathered, Darcy, that you texted me? And but we've got other questions still up here.
No, you have one from Seattle 2016 that is asked.
Got it. Okay, got it. I realize you may not know, but do we have any kind of timeline for employees returning back to campus? You are correct, I don't know, but at this point, as people ask me, I would say that we expect to have employees coming back, well, I'll have to read the guidance that came from the governor today, but I'm thinking that we're going to be able to start being back on campus in some way back in come June. It might be earlier than that, but if people ask me, I say I'm hoping that June we start getting employees back on campus. July we start getting students back on campus, and then August 24th we're open with face-to-face classes. That's what I'm saying, but I'm also hedging and saying it's not entirely up to us. We have guidance from the Department of Public Health. We have requirements that we're going to have to meet from the governor, and we have a virus that has its own mind. And so that's what I'm saying, because that gives me something around which I can plan. But at the end of the day, I honestly don't know all the details of where that's going to be and where we're going to end up on that sort of a question. Student loaner computers for use off campus can't handle some software programs based upon their age. Is there any plan for purchasing or upgrading the student loaner computers and increase the number of them in case we have many distance courses again this fall? So far, it hasn't been in the plan.
Yeah. I know when we did start out in the process that we're in now, we did purchase some Chromebooks for that purpose. In fact, we just checked one out today for a student. So I do know that's part of it, perhaps maybe in the technology, some of the technology money that you allocated before.
Yeah, and
might be able to get a few more of those type of things.
And it may be that the Chromebooks don't have the capability to handle some of the needs. So
At least we can investigate.
so we can
Right.
investigate that.
And as we prioritize our stimulus funding, because that could potentially be a reimbursable
Absolutely,
purchase.
absolutely. This comes from Angela Lynn. Thank you, Angela. This is not a question, but just wanted to point out that Ames recently updated the ward screen to allow ward reports to be emailed to the user's WIU email account. So you don't even have to go to a PDF document, you can just email it directly to the account. Thank you, Angela. Will class meetings be scheduled so as to reduce building density, i.e. opportunity for airborne infection? It's certainly on the list of things that we're looking at. I don't know the answer. I don't know the specific answers of how we do this, and part of that is going to be, again, can we spread out our classes better? The answer is probably yes, we can. I just don't know how it gets implemented, given the realities of where we are. And I don't know what the classes look like at the moment in terms of how they're filling, where they're located, where they're housed, how we can move things around, how we're going to end up spreading things apart as we add more into the, or look at the schedule. One of the things the group was looking at that I heard about yesterday was the possibility of moving more classes online. Obviously, that reduces the burden on the classrooms and it gives us more opportunity to distance. A lot of this yet has to be looked at and has to be evaluated, and there's a lot going on that has us, continues to have us looking at some of these things. Next question. Have you explored how we can have online proctoring of exams that can work with any laptop? Without the testing center being available or proctoring in public libraries, proctor exams are only available for those whose computers are compatible with Respondus Monitor. A commitment to integrity in exams is only possible online if we have online proctoring of exams that work for all students. You are absolutely correct. And we will have to have an appropriate system in order to be able to handle those for all students and on all machines and all activities. I don't know how we're going to get there yet, but you are 100% correct that this is something we're going to have to be able to do. back to the fine arts fees and talent grant fees, so I'll read this. This will devastate the capacity for recruitment and retention in the Department of Theater and Dance, as well as the School of Music and the Art Department. We have asked to recruit, and we have worked extremely hard at that. These cuts nullify our efforts, and it's incredibly disappointing. Student fee difference is 0.86 or 86 cents for each student per credit hour from this current year to next year. That may sound minimal, but the cumulative amount of our arts program is significant and imperative for the future of academic program. I will just say once again, we've looked at the numbers. The amount of funds that are needed are available such that anything that's been committed and anything that you've gone out and recruited for is still going to be supported. So continue to recruit. And these changes is simply addressing some of the realities of where the students are and where the dollars are. And we're going to continue to support the students that you have successfully recruited. Thank you for continuing to recruit. We will continue to support those efforts. What should we do if we suddenly go online and we learn that some of our students have little or no access to the internet? I mean, if we suddenly go online and and if we make a decision on August 10th that as of August 24th we're going to be all online, we're going to figure out a way to get technology to the students so that they can take their classes. We have more experience doing it now than we did 2 months ago because we just did that. Some of it's successful, some of it not as successful as would have liked. But we know a lot more about the questions, we know a lot more about the challenges, and we know a lot more about how we can answer those questions. So if we, on August 10th, we make a decision that we have to go all online on August 24th, I guarantee you we'll do a better job this time around than we did last time. But I'm very hopeful that we don't have to make that choice come August. Our maintenance project's still going to happen this summer. For instance, the parking lot behind Knobloch is in very poor shape and really needs work in addition to many buildings needing maintenance. Yes, there's still some maintenance projects that are going to go on. We know that there's capital money still available for some of the maintenance projects. I don't know which maintenance projects are going to be able to go forwards and which ones will not. The state got put a little bit behind as they went all online and all virtual. And to be honest, some of those projects that we're looking at are going to be problematic at this point if we try to get them completed over the summer because they may not be able to be completed during the summer given the late starts that we're now looking at. So we're trying to balance what we can do with the money that's available and the time that we have available. And we want to be cognizant of the fact that by August 24th, we expect to have buildings open and classes in session. And if we can't complete some of these maintenance projects that would allow that, then we may choose to defer some of those projects as well. So some challenges there that we have to look at, and we'll continue to move forwards. Do we have a definite date in mind for a fall decision to be made? For example, will a decision be made by July 24 to allow rearranging of student schedules? We're making decisions in real time and as quickly as we can. I would tell you that I hope by July 1st we pretty much know what we're doing. I've told other people that I kind of work in a 2-month window, and I look at today being the middle of, early in May, that we should be making decisions now for early in July. Come early in July, we probably need to be making decisions that are definitive for the middle towards end of August. That doesn't mean I have to have all the answers of what we're doing at the middle of or end of August by the 1st of July, but I have to be able to tell you 1st of July, I have to be able to tell you, yep, we're going to be teaching face-to-face classes. We're going to still move as many online as we can, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that, how we're going to accommodate. Doesn't mean we have to have everything worked out, but we do have to know what we're doing. And it's not July 24th, it's really July 1st, I think, that we have to have some more definite answers for. Next question says, in general, was the transition to online courses smooth for most students and faculty? Most, yes. I will tell you there were plenty of hiccups, both for students and faculty. We had challenges in both areas. But you know, I was very pleasantly pleased, surprised, I guess. I expected it to be a lot rougher than it turned out to be. I heard from students, and I heard from faculty, and I heard from advisors and others who do things online and been forced to go online with difficulties that they had. But I would put the numbers that I heard from in the tens, not in the hundreds. And given the large numbers of people that we have, faculty, staff, and students, if I heard only from numbers in tens, and I've heard others who've heard from others as well, and they kind of would continue on with the idea that it's mostly in the tens. If that's where our challenges were, then we did a absolutely phenomenal job, and we have the faculty and the staff and the students, quite frankly, to thank for that. They recognized we were in the middle of a crisis. They stepped up. They did the very best they could. Everybody was understanding, accommodating, and did an absolutely phenomenal job. And I'm real thrilled with how well we came through and how smooth it was. Again, not to say it wasn't without hiccups, but it was just such a strong response from students and faculty and staff that we're real pleased. Will the fiscal year 2020 budget finish in the red or in the black? You want me to turn this over to our budget? I'm going to turn this over to our budget person, and she better give you the answer she keeps giving me.
So I'll rephrase your question slightly, because the budget is already set and it will not end in the black. We did have a structural budget deficit. Our actual revenues and expenditures, however, we are still looking to hopefully at least break even, maybe even end the year with a little bit of a cushion. But that will depend on, we still have some outstanding appropriation receipts to receive, on whether or not those are received in a timely manner. But the good news to report is we still have a shot at it.
Okay, here you go. How do you know whether the transition to online was smooth? Has students been surveyed about this systematically, or will they be surveyed? Students have not been surveyed. I do not intend to survey them. And the way I know that it's been smooth is I didn't get hundreds of people screaming and bitching at me that it was bad. I'm sure if there had been a lot of challenges, I'd have heard somewhere along the line, either through chairs or deans or faculty or some other way. And the fact that I didn't hear tells me that it went pretty okay. Doesn't mean it was perfect, but it was pretty okay. Doesn't mean it couldn't have been better, but I'd have heard about it if there were a lot of complaints, because when there were complaints, I hear about them. And I've gotten plenty of complaints about plenty of things, not only there, but about all sorts of other things and decisions that we've had to make. And for the most part, the complaints that I hear are in the tens and not in the hundreds and thousands. And so I'm pretty convinced that at least the transition to the online was relatively smooth. And I guess last question, since we're a little bit over time. I realize so much is up in the air right now, but do you have an opinion on whether we should go ahead and plan events for early fall semester, which we would normally be accepting registration for now, particularly career fairs and other corporate outreach? I would say yes, cautiously. If I were betting, the bet that I would make is we will be able to have events, but I would not plan very large events. And I would plan events around the idea that your people are going to have to be socially distanced. So if you're talking about a career fair, you're not going to be packing your companies in right next to each other. You're going to be spreading your companies out. You're going to have to limit the numbers of students who can be in the room physically at any one time, so that you have a good shot that those students will be properly distanced. And you're going to have to put up parameters so that you don't have groups of students flocking around an individual table. So given that you're going to have to make plans to allow you to do these events in a way that we haven't done them in the past, I would say the answer to your question is absolutely start planning now, and start planning for an event that accomplishes the goal but looks a little bit different than the way you would have conducted it this past fall.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And know that people, the union, for example, we know that over in the union, the career fair, just to use that example, that may have to spill into 2 or 3 different spaces to make that effective. And the last thing that I want to do in this position is to make it so tight that we can't do those type of things that we're used to doing. I think we just got to get creative, start planning now, think about those things and how we can still make those events successful using the guidelines and parameters that will be put into place at that time.
Okay. This last one is a comment, and I apologize if you took the phrase I said, which as anything more than just complaining or commenting. That was really all I was getting at. So when I say bitching, I think that's where I am in terms of somebody's come up and raised a concern, and I'm just using the vernacular. So I apologize if you took it differently than I had intended it to be, and that way. That's really all we have. The last comment here says a virtual career fair might be an interesting thing to explore. I agree, but again, a virtual career fair is going to look and feel a little bit different. And from the standpoint of getting things moving and putting things together, the sooner you start organizing, the greater the flexibility we have to structure it in a way that will work given the restrictions that we have and the limits that we're going to be placed under. So with that, we're over time at this point. There's no open questions sitting out there. So I will say thank you all for coming. Thank you all for participating. These were some excellent questions, some great opportunities to talk about some of the challenges that we have, and for me to be able to share with you some of the things that we're working on. We are spending a lot of time. We do want to hear from you, get your feedback, get your input. You guys have, faculty, staff, students. You have excellent ideas. You have excellent thoughts in terms of what we can achieve. Please let us know. Please reach out. And it doesn't have to be me. There's a lot of people that are engaged in doing a lot of these things. We're all open to any of the ideas that you might have. We appreciate all the hard work that you are doing. It is faculty and staff that have made this a success for the university for the past years, but especially so in the last 6 weeks. And without you, we couldn't possibly be successful. So thank you for everything that you do. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you staying with us a little late this evening. And enjoy the rest of the day. And I'm sure I'll see some of you tomorrow, virtually tomorrow, at the board meeting. So thank you.